Hey guys, it's Becky with Design Bundles, and I'm super excited to bring you another volume in our Silhouette Studio tutorials. So today, what we're going to be talking about are fonts. We are going to cover curving fonts, we are going to cover using glyphs with fonts, and we'll create our own file, and you can follow along this easy peasy tutorial, and by the end of it, you'll be thinking, man, I really love fonts. So here we are in Silhouette Studio, and I'm just really excited to show you what I mean by text effects. I'm going to knock out some of the easy ones first, and then of course we are going to work our way up to what I consider more advanced. Okay, now the very first text effect, let's talk about curving text. Okay, and I'm just going to draw a circle. And when we talk about curving text, what I mean is the ability to make this text follow the path of this circle. Now, that also means that if I were so inclined to draw a wave, all right, please forgive my freehand drawing skills, all right, but we can do the same thing. So let's go ahead and do that. What you're going to do, let's see, I want another text. So the first thing that we're going to do is double click. Now this is also how you would edit the text. So we'll call this the editing text format. And you notice how you get this little directional arrow icon over here? You want to put your cursor right in the middle of it, hold down your mouse key, and the text will literally pop straight onto your curve. Okay, now once you get it positioned where you like it, you can do that by just moving left and right again on that little directional arrow. You can also move it below and above, all right, just depending on where it needs to go, and that's using this slider here. Once you get it where you want it, you can simply right click and choose Convert to Path. So now you can actually get rid of that circle and your text will stay the same. You also need to remember to use Convert to Path, because sometimes if you don't convert your text to path after you've curved it, it will do weird things if you go to mirror your design, such as for heat transfer vinyl. So it's better just to go ahead and remember to do that right off the bat. Now let's talk about our wavy line text. It's going to be the same process. I'm going to double click, drag my little directional arrow icon, and it will pop straight onto the line. And then I can move it back and forth depending on where I want it to go. Now let's also talk about if for some reason the text was too close together, like an example for line here, what we're going to do is we can increase our character spacing and it will space those letters out. Okay, now in this in particular, you have to watch how your letters look. That one didn't work out too terribly well, but you know, it's not really awful either. So we might just have to update some of those by hand. But that's how you would space them out or even bring them closer together depending on what you need. All right, so here, let's bring those back. But we will do the same thing. Now another thing that you can do, especially if this is a script font, but it has letters here that are overlapping. So instead of Convert to Path, we will weld and then we will group. And now I can actually get rid of that line, and you'll see that the areas that were overlapping, such as with the T and the E, those are now welded together. All right, so we have our wavy line text and we have our curving text. Now let's talk about an offset, because there are a few reasons why you would want to create an offset. The first would just be to have a outline for layering. So if we say layering and we create our offset is going to give us this really awesome border all the way around. So I'm just going to hit apply. Now, I'm going to create a duplicate of this. I used Control and my downward arrow, but I want to show you some really cool things you can do with the offset. Now, first and foremost, just for our regular layering, let's use some fall colors. We'll use a maroon and an orange. Those are nice. I like those. So basically, this is really useful, especially think about if you are putting this on, for example, a glitter tumbler. Okay, sometimes if you have too much going on in the background, like glitter or alcohol inks or just a pattern, then the offset will help create definition on your text. So definitely give that a try next time you're working with something like that. And then also, if I select both of these, I'm going to right click and choose Make a Compound Path. And this is going to give me something a little different. It's going to give me the outline. Okay, so depending on the look I'm going for, that is actually the same feature as far as using the offset, but we have two different outcomes. One is a layering, and one is just simply to give me that bold outline, and then I would leave the inside of my letters open. So completely up to you. Now let's do something with these guys. What colors do we want? We want some fall colors. We'll use purple and maybe a brown. No, I don't like the brown. Maybe a wine. There we go. That's pretty. So we have wavy line, we have curved text, we have layering. Group those together. And then instead of layering, let's redo that one and you guys can see it again. So there we go. So we have our layering, our outline, we have our curved text, and we have our wavy line text. So what other text effects can we get into? Now, I know what you may be thinking, what about glyphs? Well, lucky for you, we already have an entirely separate video on using glyphs in Silhouette Studio. So if glyphs is what you're looking for, then make sure you check out that video. La 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 la. Okay, so let's talk about two more reasons why you would want to use that offset. I'm going to type out, what do we want to call this? Outside edge. And then we also want to talk about a thicker font. Okay, so with outside edge, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. It's still going to be using that offset feature, but instead we are going to say offset, and we'll make this one just a tad bit smaller than we did the last time. Okay, we will hit apply, group that together, and then we want to do another offset, and we'll do this one 0.05, and I'm going to hit apply again and group again. But then I'm going to select these and I'm going to right click and choose Make a Compound Path. So now let's do a green. When I do a nice green color and take that off, see what I have now? So now instead of just the outline, I have the outline and the inside. And that's just kind of different. You will see that a lot when you're doing like sports teams or we'll call them manly designs, just because it usually reminds you of that collegiate font or a sports font where you'll have that outside line. And it can also give you the advantage that you could make this two colors. You could do the outside line in one color and the inside text in a different color. Now let me go ahead and change this font. This is a pretty thin font, obviously. And even when I fill it in, let's just go with a standard black. I could see where my machine would have problems cutting this and I would have problems weeding it, right? So I'm going to zoom in so that you can see, and I'm going to create an offset. And this is how you can thicken up a font. Now, what I do is I bring my scale all the way down and I slowly increase because I don't want it so thick that it changes the look of the font. Does that make sense at all? Okay, so I'm going to stop at 0.05 and we'll group those together. And then let's take a look at what that looks like. And there we go. We have our thin font and our thicker font. And those are exactly the same font, just that one is done with an outline and the other is the original. Next, let's talk about warping your fonts. Okay, now the basic warping features come into play starting with Designer Edition Upgrade. You do not, unfortunately, have any warping features on the basic edition. All right, but let me go ahead and just Now I'm going to switch up our font a little bit. Not that this one wouldn't look really cool warped, but it's already kind of warped. So we're going to go for something a little bit more neutral. And let's say I wanted this in a shape. If I come over to my warp feature right there, I can go to warp selected shapes. Now that's my freehand warp. I can come up here to my second icon. Now the warp templates come into play. I believe it's going to be Designer Edition Plus is when the warp templates and the conical warp will come in. But I can select any of these templates and it will warp my text. Now it will also warp shapes, but since we're talking about text effects, well, then that's what we're worried about right now is how it's going to affect our text. So let me settle on one and I will show you what it looks like. And you can even freehand modify some of these. Okay, so that is one warp. And then of course, if you want it to follow an exact shape, for example, I'm just going to use this polygon. Nothing fancy, but you know, a solid example nonetheless. Now you can do this for pumpkins, you can do anything you want, any shape you want, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is just generally speaking, I'm going to size it down to fit the shape, and then we will go back to that warp panel and just choose warp selected shapes. I always zoom in so that I feel like I get a good view of it, and then I can start editing until I feel like my text takes on my shape. Now I am modifying the outside edit points first, but then of course I do have ones that are inside and that will control more or less the inside portion. And I know that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but there will be situations when you want to, be able to adjust the inside and not just what's pulling the strings along the outside. And of course, I can squeeze it in if I want. It's not really necessary for this design, but you know what? Let's go ahead and do it anyway. So originally my plan was to fit the polygon, but you know what? I'm just really digging the whole squeezed look. So let's just use that as our example. There we go. And I feel like those are two solid examples of what warping the text is going to look like. Here we will make a compound path and fill some of these in. I'm still really digging my fall colors. Not that these are necessarily fall, but I think you guys know what I mean. Alrighty, so what other text effects can we talk about today? Okay, so I have two more things to show you in regards to text effects. The first one that we're going to do is a split monogram. Now, lucky for you, we also have a separate video all about making split monograms, and you can do those not just with the letters or a monogram, but you can do them with shapes as well. So make sure you check that out if you're interested in learning more about a split monogram. And then last but not least, let's talk about subtracting text from a shape, because that also gives you a pretty cool effect. So I'm going to use a heart. This is with my Flexa shapes, in case you were wondering. And then of course I'm going to type out love. And of course I can select any font that I want. So it's completely up to you, whatever you select. And then usually I like to let some of my letters hang over the edge. Okay, so see how my L and my E both hang over? And there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and weld that together since it is a script font. I'm going to select it together with my heart and choose subtract. And once I fill this in with a nice pretty burgundy color, you can see the effect that I was going for. So let's go ahead and arrange all of our newfound text formats. Okay, so just to recap, we covered curving text. We also, what I'm calling wavy line text, but really it's just a matter of instead of curving it, we drew a wavy line. And it just goes to show that you can do that with any type of shape or cut line that you can bring in Silhouette Studio. Then we also talked about layering text using an offset. And then we talked about creating your own outline. And then we have our outside edge, which is really fun for sport type fonts and applications. And then we talked about how to thicken up a font so that you get a better cut experience. And then these are our two warp examples. We do have our little squeeze warp where we did that freehand, and then our other warp where we're using a warp template. We subtracted some text from a shape here, and then of course we have a split letter monogram to just kind of round it all out. So I'm pretty excited about the results. These are just simple fonts that I downloaded from fontbundles.net, and just being able to manipulate them in Silhouette Studio gives you a totally different experience for each one, and just really kind of takes your designing to the next level.
So, how do you guys feel about fonts? They are such a powerful tool to add to your arsenal. And using them in Silhouette Studio, they make it so easy for you to be able to modify them and get the most out of using them. So I'm really glad we were able to explore fonts with you today. And of course, if you have any questions, make sure that you put them in the comments because we do come back and check in with you guys. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel because of course, we have a lot more tutorials coming for you in the future. So thanks for watching.